Welcome to HMS M33. HMS M33 was ordered just after the start of World War I. What is HMS M33? Monitor designed for one job: get close to shore and hammer enemy positions with heavy guns. She belonged to the M29 class, built around surplus 6-inch Mark 12 guns, removed from Queen Elizabeth class battleships, laid down April 1915, launched May 22, 1915, commissioned June 1915, builder Workman Clark for Harland and Wolff, Belfast displacement approximately 580 tons, speed 9.6 knots, beam 31 feet 9.4 meters, draft 5 feet 11 inches 1.80 meters, installed power 4,000 horsepower 2,980 kilowatts. Crew approximately 72 men. Propulsion triple expansion steam engines, twin screws, range 1,440 nautical miles, 2,670 kilometers, at 8 knots, 15 kilometers per hour. Armament 2BL 6-inch, 152 millimeters, Mark 12 guns. 1 QF 6-pounder, 57 millimeters, gun 2, Maxim guns. She was ordered for one very specific, urgent reason. The Royal Navy needed more shallow draft ships capable of bombarding shore positions for the Gallipoli campaign, and they needed them immediately. The core reason: Gallipoli demanded more monitors. By early 1915, the Admiralty realized that the landings at Cape Helles, Anzac, and later Suvla Bay required ships that could creep close inshore without grounding, deliver heavy, accurate gunfire in support of troops, survive in narrow waters, under artillery fire, be built fast, using whatever guns were available. The existing monitors, HMS Humber, Severn, Mersey, and the early M class, were already committed. More were needed urgently. Thus, the Admiralty ordered 5 new monitors: M29, M30, M31, M32, and M33. Why this design? The design was driven by availability, not ideal engineering. The Navy had spare 6-inch Mark 12 guns lying around, removed from the new Queen Elizabeth class battleships when their secondary batteries were redesigned. The hull was deliberately simple, a shallow box with minimal armor, easy for civilian yards to build quickly. Speed didn't matter. Shore bombardment ships didn't need to be fast, only stable enough to fire and tough enough to take punishment. This meant M33 could be built in just 7 weeks, an astonishing pace for a warship. Strategic context: the Dardanelles crisis. By April 1915, the naval attempt to force the Dardanelles had failed. The Army landings were imminent, and the Navy needed more ships to suppress Turkish artillery hidden trench positions inaccessible to battleships, provide continuous fire support during troop advances, operate in extremely shallow water where larger ships couldn't go. Monitors were the only vessels that could do this job. M33 was ordered specifically to join this bombardment force. The official Admiralty logic, in plain terms: if you boil down the Admiralty's reasoning, and it's this: we need more small ships with big guns for Gallipoli. Build them fast, build them cheap, and use the guns we already have. M33 is the purest expression of that requirement. Her name changed: M33, 1915 to 1924. HMS Minerva, 1925 to 1939. Hulk C-23, 1939 to 1945. RMAS Minerva, 1945 to 1997. HMS M33, 1997. She was renamed HMS Minerva in 1925 for a very practical, bureaucratic Royal Navy reason. Her role changed, so her name had to change with it. That's the short answer. Here's the deeper, more interesting one. The real logic behind the Admiralty's decision. The core reason she stopped being a monitor. By 1925, the First World War was long over. The Royal Navy no longer needed tiny shore bombardment ships like M33. Instead, it needed mine layers, small vessels able to lay defensive minefields around British waters. So the Admiralty converted M33 into a mine layer, and once she changed role, the Navy's naming conventions kicked in. Monitors used numbers, M29, M30, M31. Mine layers use names usually mythological or classical. Thus, M33 became HMS Minerva, named after the Roman goddess of strategy and defensive warfare. A fitting choice for a ship now laying mines rather than firing shells. The administrative logic: the Royal Navy has always been strict about naming conventions, monitors numbers only. Mine layers, mythological names. Destroyers, names beginning with the same letter within a class submarines. Alphanumeric sequences, H-class, L-class, T-class, etc. Once M33 was no longer a monitor, keeping the M33 designation would have been incorrect on paper, confusing in fleet lists, and out of step with naval tradition.
In March 1915, an Allied British and French fleet tried to break through the Dardanelles Strait in Turkey, reach Constantinople, and force Turkey out of the war. But the strait was heavily defended. We lost 3 battleships and abandoned the attack. Now, it's the early hours of the 25th of April. An Allied invasion force is approaching the Gallipoli Peninsula at the strait's entrance. Capture this, and we can open up the Dardanelles to the Navy. Tens of thousands of us from across the British Empire and France are about to be landed by boat. We've not tried anything on this scale before, and waiting for us are the Turks. We've had weeks to prepare.
At about 2 o'clock that night, the moon was still shining. I saw straight in front of us a large number of ships.
Everything was absolutely quiet as we approached. And as the first boat touched the shore, a single shot broke the stillness.
The Australians and New Zealanders, or Anzacs, land to the north. The British attack in the south.
The rifle fire poured into us as we got out of the boats and made for the sandy shore. There was tremendously strong barbed wire. Man after man behind me was shot down. The first 48 men to follow me all fell.
The color of the sea changed with the blood from the bodies of the enemy. The shore became full of corpses, like a shoal of fish.
Despite the bravery of our lads, the landings are a disaster. Planning was wildly optimistic, and command is lacking. We're pinned down on or near the beaches.
To stay seemed to make certain of death. But to leave meant the loss of the whole enterprise. We stayed.
Come on, mate! Dig! Put your back into it!
And so we descend into the horrors of trench warfare.
That front line is bristling with machine guns. The whistle goes. We scramble up and over the top and into with a machine gun, rifle fire, strap up, basket overhead. I was in the first line to advance and we did not get 10 yards. Everyone felt like arms to me. It was simply murder.
The order I gave to my commanders was, I don't order you to attack, I order you to die!
On the Turks came, crowd after crowd. The machine guns were blowing them down. What had they gained? Nothing. A small trench. Everywhere lay the dead. Swollen, black and hideous. And over all, a nauseating stench that made one feel desperately sick. Dropping water, mate. The wounded, lying in the hot sun, were plagued by flies, swarming over every dressing, their wounds crawling with maggots.
The Navy pound the Turkish positions with heavy guns. The Turks are commanded by a German, General von Sanders, and he can call up a deadly new weapon.
We dive to 70 feet, and I maneuver to U-21 for a torpedo shot. Out, periscope! Torpedo fire!
The explosion shook the ship, and she heeled starboard.
We have our own new weapons. Small ships with big guns that can get close to shore. Monitors, like M33.
7th of August, arrived off Gallipoli Peninsula, fired 59 rounds. Don't think Mr. Tate likes the look of us.
The monitors support new landings, trying to break the deadlock. But this attack also fails. It's complete stalemate.
The whole terrain was scored, mined, crisscrossed with traps and barbed wire.
Our commander, General Hamilton, stubbornly refuses to accept the situation is unwinnable.
It has become a question of who can struggle longest and hardest.
Now the Germans are bringing big guns to help the Turks. And the harsh Gallipoli winter is coming.
The morning of 26th of November was overcast, and the wind steadily rising. A foreboding of evil seemed to come to all.
The men who were unfortunate enough to sleep were mostly frostbitten by morning. Men died of exposure, too tired to make the necessary effort to live.
Finally, General Hamilton is sacked and replaced with General Monroe, who quickly grasped the reality.
In my opinion, evacuation should be taken in hand.
We'll be massacred if the Turks suspect anything. Every single man must now be evacuated under cover of darkness.
At last, our time to go to come. And with blankets tied around our feet to muffle the noise, we made our way along the blanket-covered trenches and down to the beach.
The men talked little. We were all saddened by thoughts of the little wooden crosses we were leaving behind.
The evacuation is a complete success, but little consolation for failure, or for the staggering human cost. 329,000 men from both sides, either killed, wounded, or missing.
The assault had failed, not because the men were unwilling to face danger, but because it was physically impossible to succeed.
The conversion itself. When she became HMS Minerva, she was modified to carry and deploy naval mines, operate in home waters rather than overseas, serve in a defensive, not offensive role work, with boom defense and harbor protection units. Her new name reflected this quieter, more domestic purpose. A non-obvious insight renaming her also helped erase her wartime identity. The Navy in the 1920s was shrinking, reorganizing, and trying to forget the trauma of Gallipoli and the Russian Civil War. Ships like M33 were repurposed, renamed, and folded into peacetime duties. Her new name symbolized a new life, one that would last another 90 years. Molded to an office, Hulk. She was called a Hulk because by the late 1930s, HMS M33/Minerva was no longer an active warship. In Royal Navy terminology, a hulk is a ship that has been stripped of engines, armament, and operational capability, and permanently moored to serve as a static floating building, an office, storehouse, workshop, accommodation block, or depot. It's not a nickname. It's an official classification. Wartime Service Gallipoli Campaign, 1915 to 16. M33 sailed for the Dardanelles in July 1915 and supported the Suvla Bay landings in August. Her job was to bombard Ottoman positions and protect advancing troops. She remained on station through the chaotic later months of the campaign, Aegean and Salonika 1916 to 18. After Gallipoli, she moved to Salonika, then spent most of the war with detached squadrons in the Aegean, bombarding Turkish coastal positions, enforcing blockades, patrolling shipping lanes, acting as guard ship and boom defense vessel. By 1918, she was at Mudros, helping supervise the armistices with Bulgaria and Turkey. Russian Civil War, 1919. Early 1919, she was sent to North Russia, joining the White Sea Squadron at Archangel. Her shallow draft made her ideal for river operations on the Dvina, supporting Allied and White Russian forces against the Bolsheviks. She took several direct hits, but suffered no serious damage, earning her reputation as a lucky ship. Post-war career after WW1, she lived a long, strange afterlife. 1925, converted to a mine layer and renamed HMS Minerva. 1939, became Hulk C-23, a floating staff office, WW2, used as a boom defense workshop, post-war a floating workshop, and office at Gosport 1980s to 90s, passed through preservation groups, partially restored 2014, handed to the National Museum of the Royal Navy 2015, open to the public at Portsmouth Historic Dockyard. Today, you can visit HMS M33 beside HMS Victory in Portsmouth. She's restored in striking dazzle camouflage, with her forward 6-inch gun reinstated. She serves as a museum ship, telling the story of Gallipoli and the men who served aboard her. Suvla Bay, August 1915, during the height of the landings. You are aboard a tiny, stubborn monitor with 2 6-inch guns, a crew of approximately 70, and a day of relentless heat, flies, gunfire, and surreal calm, 0000 to 0200, midnight heat, silent guns, and the smell of cordite. The night is thick and windless, the air still holding the heat of the day. The deck feels warm underfoot. The metal never truly cools. The crew lies scattered on deck, shirts off, trying to sleep in the open air. The stoker's mess is humid and sour with sweat and coal dust. A faint smell of cordite lingers from the evening's firing. A lookout murmurs to another, "Quiet tonight, too quiet." You hear distant rifle fire from the beaches, sporadic, nervous, like someone tapping metal in the dark. 200 to 400, the sea turns glassy. A faint breeze arrives. The Aegean becomes a sheet of black glass. The engine room is at its coolest point. Of the day, still 30 degrees Celsius. A few men brew tea on the still warm breech of the port 6-inch gun. The midwatch checks ammunition hoists, wiping sweat from their eyes even at night. A petty officer chalks a message on a shell. For Suvla dawn, 400 to 500, false dawn. The horizon begins to pale. Shapes appear, transports, trawlers, lighters, all ghost-like. The crew stirs. The cook lights the galley stove. The smell of burnt porridge drifts across the deck. The gun crews stretch, rubbing sore shoulders. The XO checks the range tables, muttering about the day's fire missions. A Marine leans on the rail, watching the sky brighten. Another bloody hot one. 500 to 600, first light, first orders. The sun breaks over the hills behind the Ottoman lines. The signalman receives a flag hoist from a nearby destroyer. 3-3, stand by for bombardment. The crew snaps awake. Ammunition parties open the ready-use lockers. The guns are run out, breeches checked, sights aligned. The ship's awning is rigged. It will be useless by noon. The heat rises fast. 600 to 700, opening bombardment. The order comes, commence firing. The first 6-inch round leaves the barrel with a crack that shakes the whole ship. The deck vibrates. Dust falls from beams. The smell of cordite becomes overpowering. The gun crews work in a rhythm. Load, ram, close, fire, open, extract. 700 to 900, continuous fire. The guns thunder every few minutes. The breeches grow dangerously hot. Men pour seawater over the metal to cool it. One casing bounces and ignites part of the awning. The cook beats it out with a saucepan. A Turkish battery replies. Shells whistle overhead, splashing into the sea. One lands close enough to drench the bow with spray. A sailor mutters, "They're getting our range." 900 to 1100, the heat becomes punishing. The sun is brutal now. The gunhouse reaches 50 degrees Celsius. Men work shirtless, drenched in sweat. Flies swarm everywhere, in food, in water buckets, on faces. A fisherman in a tiny boat rows past, shouting, "Fish! Fresh fish!" The crew buys some. Minutes later, M33 resumes firing. Gallipoli is madness. 1100 to 1200. Dinner under fire. Dinner is served. Hardtack bully beef. Tea so strong it could strip paint. A shell lands close enough to knock a sailor's entire meal off the table. He curses, retrieves the tin, and keeps eating. 1200 to 1400, a brief lull. The guns fall silent. The crew collapses into shade. Some sleep, some write letters. Some bathe using buckets of seawater, fully exposed on the flat deck. A goat, the infamous mascot, wanders around chewing signal flags. It headbutts a petty officer, 1400 to 1600, maintenance and waiting. The lull continues. Gun crews clean the barrels. The engine room checks pumps and filters. The XO updates firing tables for the afternoon's missions. The heat is suffocating. The deck is too hot to stand on barefoot. A stoker jokes, "We're cooking from the soles up." 1600 to 1700, afternoon bombardment orders arrive. Support advance inland. The guns roar again. Dust clouds rise from the hills. Ottoman guns reply with more accuracy. One shell lands so close it rocks M33 sideways. A gunner chalks a new message, "Ouch!" 1700 to 1900, smoke, sweat, and sunset. The sun sinks. The sky turns orange behind the hills. The guns fire sporadically. The crew is exhausted, faces streaked with sweat and soot. The sea breeze finally returns. A Marine plays cards with the signalman. They bet with cigarettes. 1900 to 2100. Evening calm. The firing stops. The ship drifts gently at anchor. Men eat a light supper. Someone tells a joke about the goat. The violinist plays again. A folk tune this time. The hills glow faintly with fires from the day's bombardment. 1900 to 2100. Evening calm. The firing stops. The ship drifts gently at anchor. Men eat a light supper. Someone tells a joke about the goat. The violinist plays again, a folk tune this time. The hills glow faintly with fires from the day's bombardment. 2100 to 2300. Night watch darkness settles. Lookouts scan for small boats. The engine room runs quietly to keep power to the searchlight. The crew lies on deck, staring at the stars. A distant machine gun rattles from the beach. 2300 to 2400. Midnight again. The day ends as it began. Hot, quiet, tense, surreal. A sailor writes in his diary, "Another day in hell, but we're still afloat." M33 rests, ready to do it all again tomorrow. She briefly had the unofficial nickname HMS Mugwump. For 3 months she carried this strange unofficial name, Mugwump, before the Navy quietly dropped it. It appears in the Portsmouth Historic Dockyard's record of her service. She was considered a lucky ship, despite being repeatedly hit by enemy fire. During the 1919 Russian Civil War intervention, M33 took multiple direct hits on the River Dvina, but suffered no serious damage and no casualties, earning her the reputation of a lucky ship on her return to Britain. A ship designed for the Mediterranean ended up fighting in the Arctic. After Gallipoli, she was abruptly repurposed for the White Sea Squadron and sent to Archangel, a brutal climate, for a flat-bottomed, lightly built monitor intended for warm coastal waters. She is the only surviving Allied ship from the Gallipoli campaign. Of all the vessels that fought at Gallipoli, M33 alone survives, making her a uniquely rare artifact of that disastrous theater. She once helped salvage another monitor under enemy fire in May 1916. While under Turkish fire, M33 assisted in salvaging the guns of the damaged managed monitor M30, beached on Long Island in the Gulf of Smyrna. She supervised armistices with both Bulgaria and Turkey in late 1918. M33 was one of the vessels overseeing the armistice arrangements at Stavros, Bulgaria, and Syria, Turkey. A tiny monitor acting as a diplomatic overseer is unusual, to say the least. Miss Muggins, the lucky cat. Miss Muggins was M33's feline mascot, and she became famous for surviving an explosion on the Dvina River in 1919 with only a burnt tail. She was treated as a good luck charm afterwards, especially since M33 was already known as the lucky ship. The 16-year-old sailor, the youngest crew member aboard M33, was just 16 years old, living and fighting in the same brutal conditions as men twice his age. Oilskins over hammocks. In cold weather, condensation inside the hull was so severe that it dripped constantly from the deckhead. Men had to rig oilskins over their hammocks to stop water dripping onto their faces as they slept. A medical officer described the ship as sweating in winter. Stifling heat and sealed ventilation. Ventilation had to be shut during rough weather to keep out seawater. This made the ship stiflingly hot in summer, especially in the Mediterranean, where the steel hull turned the mess deck into an oven. Clerks, butchers, farmers turned gunners. The crew came from wildly varied civilian backgrounds. Clerks, butchers, farmers, laborers suddenly transformed into gunners, stokers, wireless operators, and Marines. The mix of personalities created a lively, sometimes chaotic mess deck culture, living, eating, sleeping in one tiny space. 72 men lived on a single deck. They ate beside their hammocks, boots, and ditty boxes. Officers had cabins barely larger than cupboards. The cramped conditions produced endless small comic dramas, lost boots, spilled tea, and men swinging into hammocks only to collide with someone else's elbow. The cordite tea trick. The breech of the 6-inch guns got red hot during firing. The crew often brewed tea on it. The prank: a stoker would quietly swap someone's enamel mug for one with a slightly bent rim, so when the gun fired and the breech jolted, the tea would slosh directly into the victim's lap. The mess deck called it gunner's baptism. The goat in the hammocks. M33 briefly had a goat aboard, acquired from Anzac troops. One night, 2 ratings hoisted the goat into the hammock tier so that when the morning watch came off duty, they found a bleeding, furious goat occupying the best sleeping spot. The goat headbutted a petty officer. The prank was never repeated. Boris the dog and the alarm. Bell Boris, the scruffy archangel dog who adopted M33, loved the ship's bell. Crewmen taught him to nudge it with his head. The prank. They encouraged Boris to ring the bell at random hours, causing half the mess deck to leap up, thinking it was a drill. Officers were not amused. The crew were delighted. The grease on the hatch handle. Trick monitors used thick-bearing grease everywhere. A classic prank was smearing it on the underside of a hatch handle, so the next person to open it got a handful of black, sticky muck. On M33, this was usually aimed at new arrivals. It was considered a rite of passage.